You may find at times that you would like to add individuals into the program from a spreadsheet who are not inside of the voter file. Or maybe you have individuals who are voters, however, there is additional information that you would like to add to them inside of the system. If you do have a large number of records, and those records are in a spreadsheet format, you can use this process. This type of import will import those individuals into your people database. This is accessed under the Actions section of the navigation menu. Move down to Import Data, then click Import New People. Inside of the Import New People page, you can click on the Browse button to locate the file that contains the records that you would like to upload. Note, in order to upload into our system, you will need to have at least the first name and last name for each record that you would like to upload. After you have selected your file, you will then use the Select File Type, Text, or Excel drop-down menu to select the file type of the file that you're importing. Inside of here, you have the option to select an Excel spreadsheet, CSV file, TSV file, a special file type created by you under Text Other, or a text file that was created in Numbers on a Mac. If your first row does contain a column header, leave the first row contains column title checkbox activated. If it does not have a header, then deactivate the checkbox. From there, you can click on the Load My File button. This will begin to load your file and display a preview down in the middle of the screen. If everything looks good, click the next button to move on to the mapping section. Inside of this page, you'll see a list of all of your various columns. If your columns did contain a header, then you'll see the actual names of the columns. If the columns did not contain a header, you'll see labels like F1, F2, F3, and so on. In the Map to PDI DB columns, you have the ability to select which matching PDI field those columns should be matched to. If your columns are labeled, we'll try our best to do a pre-match for you. In those cases, you can click the Confirm Settings link to confirm the match. For any items that were matched incorrectly, use the Select Column drop-down menu to make the proper selection. Besides the standard information fields, such as first name, last name, and email address, there are some additional special fields. These are any fields such as is canvasser, is donor, is member, is phone bank caller, is volunteer, and so on. For these fields, you will need to designate a status. You will need to place the letter Y in the cell for each record that meets that qualification. If you would like to upload data that doesn't fit into any of our categories, you can use the Custom Field option. If you do select the Custom Field option, you will then use the text box in the new Custom Field Name column to name the field. You will then use the drop-down menu in the Custom Data Type column to select if the field is a text field, numeric field, or a date field. Lastly, if you want to match the incoming record to the voter file, you will need to make sure that you also upload the individual with their PDI ID. This means that you will need an entire column for PDI IDs. If a record does not have a matching PDI ID, it will be imported directly into the people database rather than being linked to their voter record. Note, this is the only time in the system where you'll have the opportunity to match the record to their existing voter record. Once a record has been added to your people database, they cannot be retroactively matched. So if you do want to match any incoming individual to their voter record, make sure you take the time to search that individual in the system inside of the individual people search page and copy and paste those PDI IDs into your file. Once you have finished making all of your selections, you can either save this layout, entering in the name in the Save Column Mapping as text box, followed by clicking the Save button. Or you can move on to the next page by clicking the Next button. Note, if you did save this layout to be used in the future, the next time you import a file into the system, as long as the exact same columns match, you can use the Load a Save File Layout drop-down menu to select the file layout, and our system will pre-match those fields for you. In the next page, you'll get a preview of what the file looks like matched to the proper PDI fields. In the header row, you'll see all the PDI fields that you've selected. Your actual data will be in the additional rows. If everything here looks good, click the Next button. Inside of the Flags and Data Source tab, you have the option to add a data source to the data that you're importing, as well as adding in flags. If you do not want to add in a data source or flags, you can just click the Import button. However, it's highly recommended that you at least add a data source to the data that you're importing, so you can distinguish this data from the other previous imports, or people in your people database. I usually suggest that users use a new data source every time they do an import. That way, if the data source was uploaded in error, it is much easier to remove that one faulty upload. To select the data source, use the Select a Data Source Name drop-down menu to select the data source. If the data source that you would like to use doesn't exist, you can click on the Create New Data Source button. You will then use the data source text box to name the data source, followed by clicking on the Save button. From there, you would select the data source in the Select Data Source drop-down menu. If you would like to add a flag to each record that you're importing, activate the Apply Flag to each record in the Import File checkbox. You will then use the Select a Flag ID drop-down menu to select the flag that you would like to import. If you would like to import a flag with some additional details such as a survey question or acquisition type, and click Advanced Options. You can then select the survey question in the Survey Question drop-down menu. You will then use the Select an ID flag drop-down menu to select the flag. Then you can use the Acquisition Type drop-down menu to select an acquisition type. Lastly, you can associate the flag with a particular canvasser. If you do not want to associate the flag with a particular survey question, activate the No Survey Question checkbox. You will then use the Associate Answers with Campaign drop-down menu to select the flag association. Use the Select a Flag ID drop-down menu to select the actual flag that you're importing. Use the Acquisition Type drop-down menu to select the acquisition type for the flag that you're importing. And use the Canvasser drop-down menu to select the canvasser that should be associated with that flag. Once you're happy with your selection, click the Import button. If your import has been successful, you'll see a pop-up in the upper right-hand corner, notifying you of a successful import and how many records have been imported. Note, our database does not allow individuals with duplicate email addresses to be imported into the system. So, if someone in your People database already exists with a matching email, that individual will not be imported. When this happens, you'll get a pop-up screen notifying you that there are some records that are causing conflictions. You can either select to continue your import, or you can cancel the import altogether. You also have the option to view the conflicting records. This file will give you a list of each record that is conflicting. You can either look at that record manually in the system and add on to those records using the detail in your spreadsheet, or you can remove those email addresses from the existing records in your spreadsheet and retry the import process.